This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Stephanie Warlick, and we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. One of the things is building a sound foundation for your new small business, and I want to welcome you to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. This is the first time you've been on the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, Venom. Thanks for having me. So excited to talk to you today.
Well, it's great to talk to people in this kind of live format. That's what we do. But before we get to the heart of your story, we ask every guest a couple questions that we've been doing this for a while. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Well, most of my life, because I don't remember being a kid. I'm that old. I'm motivated to support my family. I love helping small businesses, and because I love helping small businesses, I'm able to generate a revenue to support my family. I love that.
That's cool. So you've always been an entrepreneur, or you kind
I
of?
have. I have. It's funny. I study that, and it's part of my next book. I'm trying to figure out, was I born an entrepreneur, or was I bred to be an entrepreneur because my parents were? I haven't figured it out yet, but I'll let you know after I interviewed enough entrepreneurs.
So you've also been an author. I know you've got your book, Dark and Silent Office, the Digital Accessibility Guidebook for inclusive communication in the workplace. I just did the whole thing, but
yeah, you did it great. Yeah, I wrote that book in 2024. I also wrote a children's book. I had a couple of months off from after being in the corporate world for a while. And once I could walk and breathe, because I wasn't working 16-hour days, the creativity flowed out of me. And I got 2 books out. One, the children's book I'd held in my head for 20 years. That's called Squirrels Bowling on the Roof. And then Dark and Silent Office was my need and desire to solve a problem. I call that standing in the gap. I saw a problem in the workplace where human resources professionals are really great at being inclusive and welcoming to people to come to their workplace. But when they get to let's call it the front door of the office, they pretty much lock and close and lock the door and say, well, we really aren't accessible because we don't know how to be digitally accessible. And so I tried to solve that problem for HR professionals.
Oh, wow. So does that include, I know my daughter is an accessibility kind of expert in the arts, that she does a lot of advocacy for disabled artists. So she has an online approach to galleries for artists. So she has a way of creating online galleries and these projects where she brings artists around the world online who are disabled and allows them to present their work in these online galleries, and that solves a problem that some people don't think about.
What a beautiful mission. Absolutely. So that sounds like it's a little bit digitally accessible and a little bit, helping people who might have trouble getting to museums from a logistics perspective and communication. But I focus on digital accessibility and content accessibility. I say, digital accessibility is primarily making websites available. So having closed captions on or color contrast, those kinds of things, the right fonts. But as peers and individuals within a workplace, we don't communicate with each other through a website. We communicate with each other through content and documents, or Slack and email and proposals and PDFs and things like that. So it's really how to make those documents and putting very quick, easy, low cost, low tech effort in place to be accessible and inclusive so that everybody can participate in the conversation.
So digital accessibility and content accessibility, you kind of went over that. Those are problems that people probably aren't aware that they have in enterprises. Maybe they don't even measure the issues with that. So how do people come to you? Have they recognized that they have a gap or an issue, or how do they determine that they need to talk to you?
That's a great question. Well, we have laws that require it.
So if somebody does an audit and finds out they're missing that
piece. Yeah, and hopefully we just know those compliance laws. There's the EAA law in Europe just came out in June, and we have those other laws in the US. However, I think the better reason is to grow that awareness. That's really what my book was about, was ensuring that people brought awareness forward because that's half the problem. That lack of awareness is why we're not doing it. And there are statistics after statistic that show that businesses that are more inclusive are more successful from a revenue generating standpoint. They have better goodwill with their clients. There's all kinds of great business reasons, in addition to being inclusive and having a better, more diverse conversation in the workplace.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been kind of a pushback, being a diverse individual myself.
Mhm.
I'm African American and Native American, and it
Um,
seems like in the workplace today, there's been a big retreat from a political standpoint that
yeah,
potentially me walking in the room, people suspect that I'm like DEI. So then some like DEI, I'm not valid to
yeah.
be there. And so a diversity of opinion or position is like somehow like, well, now that like how does that get navigated?
It's really disappointing, I'll be honest, and I'm sorry that you have experienced that and experienced that. It is definitely frustrating. I continue to fall back on this idea that we are all better when we have a more diverse environment. We are stronger. We want diversity of thoughts. We want diversity of experiences. We want a myriad of thoughts and ideas that solve our problems better. And so I guess our work is to continue to communicate the value and the benefit that is an outcome when we have these diverse environments, and hope that outside of our political realms that our businesses do experience this positive benefit and want to continue those to reach those positive outcomes.
Yeah, kind of like specifically, comes on, accessibility to content online for like people with the disabilities, like American Disabilities
Right.
Act. So if you have
Right.
people who are blind, people who are disabled, like my daughter has kind of an invisible disability, agoraphobia, and some like issues that are not like readily apparent. But
Right.
she's got, so, she's on social security disability and she's working and doing a lot of work. But it's like sometimes people they don't give that weight, or they
Yeah.
don't try to, open up the doors to make things accessible. Like they don't do the
That's
closed
right.
caption. They
That's
don't
right.
have an online presence. So they don't have a way for people to, do it unless they walk in the door
Yeah.
physically. And so
That's
then
right.
if you don't have content accessibility or digital accessibility, then it's a global workplace. I've lived in Japan.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of times, I mean, in IT, we have, we're taking calls in India, taking calls from Poland, got people in Vietnam, got people in EU. So we have a lot of diversity in culture,
Right.
and the culture of somebody from the EU or somebody from Spain or somebody from Taiwan. There's a difference, and sometimes you need to understand like that in
Yeah.
communication. And so I'm
That's
wondering,
right.
like, how far does that go with what you're talking about in terms of content accessibility from a language or cultural perspective?
Well, culturally, and how do I say this? I mean, disabilities are worldwide. Every culture, every nationality experiences them. So the messaging, the value and the benefit of what we're talking about spans the world, um, and the education and awareness that is needed is necessary around the world. Um, I think that the awareness really is the crux of the problem. When someone has not experienced or had someone close to them with a disability, we don't teach it in our schools. I mean, I can't speak to other cultures, but we don't teach it in our schools, and it's not something we actively work with educating people. Why isn't American Sign Language offered in our high schools as one of the primary languages?
Like ASL, yeah. It's
Yeah, I mean,
do you
right.
actually have content that satisfies that? Do you have the closed captioning? Is it accessible in that way? And then maybe you don't even
That's right.
realize it's mandated that you do that,
It's
and you don't value that. But not that maybe you were on purpose not valuing it. You just didn't think about it.
Yeah, it is a lack of awareness. So bringing forward the awareness and the education, and I try, and when I speak to business owners, I'll say something like, "Well, let's say you put together a board report, and you're talking about your annual fiscal numbers, and you've just presented it to the board, and three of the board members are colorblind, and the charts in the report that you put together don't accommodate someone that has
Mhm.
colorblindness."
Yeah,
Did you
that's
want them to did you want them to read the reports, or did you want them to feel angry about your statistics and your messaging because you fail to be inclusive? It's something so easy to do, right? Use a font that people can read, and that's a 12-point font or greater, and not, possibly non-serif font. Making sure that things have color contrast so that people that have low vision can read it. Again, presenting a meeting where closed captions on. Think about board members in our society. Many of them are older.
yeah,
If
they
they
probably need
can't
that.
hear, right,
They
they're on the
probably
meet.
yeah, they probably won't even tell you. Yeah, the
That's
problem is
right.
a lot of times people won't even tell you if they didn't hear
That's
it.
right.
They won't
That's
tell
right.
you if they didn't understand it, you know?
100%. Yeah, and people, that is a common thing for people with disabilities. They try not to make themselves the center of attention and say, "Hey, I can't see that, I can't hear that," because they don't want to draw attention to themselves, or
Yeah.
they don't share that information with folks. So what I'm talking about is what in the educational space they call universal design, and that
Mhm.
is just making something available so that it can accommodate
A wider
most
net.
people,
Yeah, more
right?
expensive.
And then people don't have to ask for accommodations. It's pretty simple, but
Yeah, it's a more expansive way of thinking, and then you've got
yeah,
some people who might say, "Well, that's a special interest,
that's
and I
right.
don't need to do that. I just want to, I in A suite, I expect people to be X and Y and Z, and I don't want to see anybody from the other spaces."
Yeah, yeah,
And so if you get the kind of closed-minded, like, oh, the guys that were in the same frat, or the same people in the same sorority, or they went to the same college, or they came from the
right.
same point of view,
Or look
then
the same.
yeah, and so, like, yeah, I
Right.
was at one time in an organization where they said, "Well, we can have diversity of thought without diversity of, individual diversity."
Ooh,
And then I'm
I don't
like,
know.
"Okay," and everybody in the room didn't look like me.
Oh man.
And
I
so
can't believe somebody actually said that out loud.
yeah, well, that's the level of, like, not incoherence of not understanding what you say,
Yeah.
and the listening skills, like, you're not listening to yourself, like, before you even
Right.
listen to anybody else, maybe you should go and, like, a therapist would do go, and I've had therapists on talk about, like, listen to what you just said. Let's play it back, and now do you really understand what you said, right?
Right.
And
Probably
sometimes
not. I
in
mean, the
the
lack
corporate
of
world,
self-awareness for
you
someone
go
to
back,
even
it's like,
really say that.
did the directors actually understand what they were saying, right? Did they actually understand what the message that they put out?
Right.
Like, maybe you need to review that.
Yeah. So my little book effort. I'm also ADHD, so I wrote it in a quick guidebook fashion so that someone could kind of just turn to any page and or digitally and just say, okay, these are the 5 things I need to do if I
Like
want to have an
bullets, it's
inclusive.
like
Yeah,
bulleted points,
that's right.
like
Quick read, easy.
shortcuts or like
Yeah,
cheat sheets. I always
yeah,
like idea in IT is like we used to have in our IT departments all these like cheat sheets for the acronyms or for the steps. So you have like 1,000-page manual in IT, like especially on
yes.
mainframe.
Oh,
And then we'd have like these new cheat sheets. Like to really get to the heart of this is a 1, 2-page cheat sheet. These are the main things that you need to
yeah,
know. And then you can
yeah,
refer to the big manual if you get stuck, right? But here are the main things to get this thing to get going. And so I
yeah.
think people need that kind of, especially today, because their attention spans, right, aren't where they were. Like, I'm a child of the 70s. People could read 300,000 word books because they weren't distracted. Now people say, well, barely can read 60,000, 70,000 word books.
Wow.
So like people have, they're looking for 15-second, 30-second TikToks, you
Yeah,
know. So you have
yeah,
to think in that frame, right? It's like, well, how am I gonna actually get my message across before you skip to the next thing?
yeah, yeah. So I'm on a mission to get this book in the hands of as many HR professionals as I can. I want them to put it at every person's desk when they are onboarding on day one and say, this is how we communicate inclusively. We'll see.
Do you
Baby
have
steps.
so when you do a book release, are you like, is there like a book tour market for this type of book, for the type of corporate HR? Are there conferences or conventions that you would go and book and get into to or webinar or a podcast? To see you're on podcast, but like, what's the circuit like?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm really a novice at this kind of thing. I really did it because I felt like the message needed to get out there. I did self-publish. I've marketed on Amazon. There are conferences, of course, HR and business conferences. And I serve small businesses, so I'm talking to businesses all the time, every day. But I don't know. I haven't yet been picked up to go on any book tours.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to. Yeah, well, the podcast tour is like the first step, and then maybe a webinar, and then
That's
it's
right.
always kind of like word of mouth through your Rolodex of contacts.
That's
Like,
right.
so we're like living in a LinkedIn world where everybody's trying to post like they're like a I don't know, like they're some kind of influencer. Like it's kind of like influencer based instead of well, am I actually trying to get the job, or am I trying to be like a Instagram post? Um, but you still have to understand, like, oh, the way these algorithms are working, the way the SEO is working.
Yes,
But I
for
find that
sure.
sometimes it's like if you can get word of mouth from one organization to the next, you get their director or their CEO or their COO or their CFO to actually say, "Yeah, I like this." Right? You can give a personal reference. You can call this person. Like you can actually like send them a little note, and they'll actually respond. That seems like more accessible, where it seems like it actually works compared to some
Yeah,
of the other things that are people try
you're
to do.
100%. You're 100% right. In all of my businesses and for most of my career and professional life, word of mouth marketing has always been the greatest source of referrals in business for me. There are companies and groups. For instance, there's a group called the Valuable 500. It's 500 of very large companies around the United States that are committed to diversity and accessibility. Um, and so, yes, I do market to them and talk to them, and um, yeah, word of mouth marketing, and there are lots of supporters of disability inclusion.
But do you find in these other spaces, like the YouTube space, the TikTok space, are you trying to break into that and find a way to like sneak in the door with all these, like I said, there's all this influencer marketing
Yeah.
that's kind of based on a certain type of profile. Are you even
So,
trying to play that game?
well, I do, let's say, play that game on LinkedIn a lot. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, a little bit on YouTube, and maybe a little bit on TikTok. Some of the things I'm learning, and they do take time to learn to do them well. They also take time to create. Certainly, AI is making that a lot easier.
Mhm.
But Dark and Silent Office, that book is just one component of the work that I perform. So most of the work that I do is promoted on LinkedIn, and I'm definitely not an influencer, but I do spend some time on there and try and reach my audience.
Yeah, it's like everybody's trying to be like, an influencer, and Tony Robbins. Everybody's trying to, say, can I
Yeah,
mimic that? But it's interesting. Like when you talk about fractional like executives and fractional CEOs, and maybe people don't know what that is. So maybe I come back a couple
sure.
steps. Like, can you explain to people what that means for an entrepreneur that's a small business to having a fractional executive?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So a fractional COO is part-time, part-time executive. So many small and medium-sized businesses don't have the revenue to be able to hire a CEO or a CFO or a CMO, the chief marketing officer, or the financial officer. I'm a chief operating officer. I've also served as a chief administrative officer where I run the back offices of companies. I go in hourly or a couple hours a week or a couple hours a month and help those organizations scale where they can't hire someone at $400,000. They pay
Mm.
for 30 years of experience in bunches of hours in a retainer fashion.
Oh, so like
It's
a
a
consultant,
great
like it's
way.
kind of like
Absolutely.
the way software consultants, like programmers and business analysts, have always kind of operated, potentially, because sometimes you're a consultant, you might
Yeah.
only work 4 hours here, 2 hours here,
Yeah.
you work multiple clients. You could have a list.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, 2 hours here, 4 hours there, 6 hours here. I fly over there,
That's right.
and you. It seems like those now that kind of model has been applied to the C suite or the A suite.
That's correct. That's 100%, and it's booming right now. We do have a lot of people of our generation with 30 plus years of experience that are ready to kind of move out of the corporate space, have value to add, and then all these other small businesses. If you think about all the businesses that were created just during COVID alone, that
Mhm.
are ready to scale and move forward, but again, can't afford that resource, and maybe don't really have enough work for a full-time resource. So it's a great marriage of businesses that are ready to scale and grabbing that experience from those professionals.
That's interesting. Kind of following the economic theory, like if you have a demand, then the supply is going to eventually get created to survive. Yeah, because like, hey, I have a demand. I don't need this person 40 hours a week on a
Right.
salary. I need them to give me this task. So
That's right.
finally, like the consultant model got applied to that. I said, why can't we
That's
do
right.
that? And maybe it
That's
was that a big shift for that to happen? Do you know how that came about?
I don't know. I know it's been rising in popularity over the last couple of years. It just happened to be good timing for me. I really
You
did
were able
kind of
to
get
jump
burnt out
into
in the corporate space. And while I still many days work just as much and as many hours a day as I did before, um, I love it. I
being a
love the
captain of your own
variety.
ship. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the thing is, like, a lot of us, like, I used to work it for the Fortune 500s, and I decided I went with a smaller company.
yeah,
I was a consultant for many years, and now I'm with a startup, and I like the idea that this smaller startup is more nimble,
absolutely.
and because they're more nimble, they're willing to, like, I can wear many hats. Like, in a
Yes.
startup, I can, like, one day I'm a QA person, next day I'm a BSA, then I could be doing architect, then I could be
Yeah,
doing design. It's whatever I need to ramp up to. And if you've
absolutely.
got people with 25, 30 years experience, they can satisfy that work order. The
Yes.
work order is, we need to scale. It's like, well, how do we get
Yeah.
people to know how to do that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. But I think it takes a special personality to be able to work for a startup as well. It's very chaotic. So if you're a person that needs like firm
Structure,
structure and
yeah,
organization and wants to
9 to
sit
5.
down and do one task and not change priorities, it's not for you. I personally, again, it's probably just my personality because I get bored kind of quickly. I love the variety. I love the changing
Mhm.
priorities. I love wearing multiple hats at any one time and switching throughout the day. And I've always been like that. So I love, and that's one of the reasons why I focus on small and medium sized businesses to help them grow because there's so much green space to help them
Yeah, they're more
define their
nimble.
organizational
They're not
structure.
so hung up on their bureaucracy where you get some big
Oh,
organization. It's like they might have this idea that I wanna be agile.
yeah.
I wanna be able to do that, but then their bureaucracy still throws you into a waterfall, and they say, "Well, we're having a scrum session, but you're still running a waterfall. You're still doing a waterfall, but you're saying you're doing a scrum." It's like, "Okay." Like, okay, you can believe what you wanna believe, but you're not. You're still running the waterfall. It's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I've managed a team of software developers. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It's like they wanna be able to report they're doing agile, but they're really not. It's okay.
Right.
That's nice. But it's like it's cool to know people that know, like what they don't know, and then
Yeah,
seek out the information to solve the problem, and are
that's
not
right.
like, gonna totally it's like at my job as a software, BSA is provide multiple options to solve the business case or the user story.
Mm. Mhm.
And I'm not gonna say, "Well, I don't need to do it in COBOL or I don't need to do it in blockchain or .NET or whatever." It's like I'm kinda software agnostic. Let's find the core problem, identify that
Absolutely.
problem, and then figure
Right.
out who could work on it, what technology we could use. And
Yeah.
where some people come to you with the technology without, and they're kind of just selling that
Yeah.
without really, and trying to force it like a square peg
Yeah.
into a round hole. They
Exactly. No square pegs,
which
round
one is
holes.
it? Yeah.
You said something a second ago about about people kind of fitting the molds and things like that. I think the really interesting thing about fractional work, that it's not just about bringing in someone in that's affordable for a period of time. It's also visionaries recognizing that in order to help visionary founder owner, in order to grow their company, they kind of have to let go of certain things.
Mhm.
They have to relinquish responsibilities, and they need to really focus on what they do best. And that's a big growth hurdle for a lot of small businesses. So that founder may be amazing. They may be a great marketer. They may be great at finances. They may be great at making the recipe and creating the thing. But you can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
And so releasing some of that out and giving it to other people that you can count on to help grow your business, where you focus on those core responsibilities that you're amazing at and want to perform, is really how a small business gets to scale.
Yeah, 'cause I think insurance companies kinda sometimes used to get caught up in, like, you promote the actuary into the marketing department, but the actuary isn't a marketing guy. Like, he does, he's a math guy, right? And maybe
Right.
you think it's the same thing, and
Yeah.
maybe that's a mistake.
Yeah. That
You know,
those are different personalities altogether.
yeah, it's like you get these people get moved up just because, like, I've been 20 years as actuary, so I get to be the CEO.
Yeah,
Maybe just because 'cause you're the best actuary in the company doesn't
that's
mean
right.
you're actually the best CEO.
That's right.
And if you get industries that get locked into that kind of, in the box thinking,
That's right.
and then they can't they get stuck because they like you're stuck in your own paradigm because you're not willing, like, as a musician, like, as a producer, what I do with like a young artist is I try to get them to challenge their preconceived notions of what their music can be. A
Okay.
lot of times they'll try to make it be a clone of something else, thinking
Mm.
that that's what it should be, and I'm like, "You should show me the song you're scared to show anybody,
Oh,
'cause that's probably a truer representation of your real talent, because you are
okay.
your own secret sauce. If you're
Oh,
trying to be Taylor Swift, well, Taylor Swift already exists,
that's
right?
right.
You wanna try to take what you have and then make that the best version of yourself
Mm.
that you could be, and even maybe that's gonna challenge you, and maybe you're gonna tread water a little bit, but you're gonna have to push the envelope, and
Yeah,
that's not always comfortable, it doesn't feel safe, but that's kinda where how you grow.
it's great advice. I think that's advice that can be applied to not just music, but all different types of roles. I mean, overcoming our self-limiting beliefs and our fears about what we can and cannot do, and those naysayers that are afraid of risk and change and things like that, telling us, not to move forward. All that has to go to the side. And I have to say that in the last couple of years, as I've written the books and developed the business and things like that, there hasn't been one. I mean, not to say that I haven't failed, because there are lots of mistakes and failures. However, there hasn't been one time that I haven't walked through a door where I'm like, I'm so glad I tried that. Like, I was so afraid about what was on the other side of the door. And now I'm like, that wasn't so bad. And then I'm like, all of a sudden I have this motivation and this courage to go try the next door, just to keep seeing what's out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, because, like, in anything you do, like in software, like, we have multiple iterations. You could say there's failures, but I actually believe it's a lesson learned. Like you got,
Yeah.
like, iteration 1.52, right? So that means that, like, so is every iteration up to that, is that a failure, or did you learn something,
That's right.
right? And basically, you have to understand, is like, just because you didn't hit it out the box, like, you didn't go from 0 to 100 right out the box. That's why we have iterative development. You go on your cell phone, you get all these apps updating all the time, because we didn't know what we knew now. We don't know what we
Right.
know tomorrow, right? So now we have a way to continually
Right.
update. And I think people have to kind of continually update, like, software, and
Yeah.
realize that, like, what you didn't know yesterday, well, now you know it, so let's apply it. And not be
Yeah.
so stuck on what you didn't know yesterday and be in a
Right.
bad loop of, like, oh, I didn't know this yesterday. I was so bad. So, like, no, he's like, you needed to have that happen to get to
Absolutely.
the next thing, right?
That's right. Foundational blocks, building blocks. It's awesome.
The owner mindset, I think, is that's an interesting thing because you have the growth mindset and you have kind of limited mindset, and
Yeah.
you have people who are kind of self-limiting beliefs versus like this kind of more expansive mindset. Like people like stay in your lane. Well, why can't
Yeah.
I cross lanes?
That's right. That's right. So owner mindset is the next book that I'm working on writing. And I love it. I feel like that is a culmination of all of my life work. And it really is about that concept where we started at the beginning. Was I born an entrepreneur and a founder, or was I created? And so I've been talking to tons of entrepreneurs and asking, did you have a role model? When did you kind of know that you wanted to do this? Because it really is. My husband and I are both entrepreneurs, and we call it a curse, really,
Yeah.
because once you have that bug, you've got that bug throughout your life to try different things. You're developing new products and new businesses all the time, and it's a ton of fun if that's your thing. But it is a little scary. And so owner mindset, though, I did step away from being an entrepreneur and I went into the corporate space. My husband and I decided at some point that was best because we really wanted to make sure that our financial eggs weren't all in one basket as our girls were growing and we were
Mhm.
preparing them for college. And I was super successful in the corporate space, ever not having had experience there. And I don't have an MBA. And I had several promotions and raises over a 12-year period in 3 different companies. And I was like, why? Here I am with less experience in this space than this person, but I got this promotion and I got this raise. And I have been garnering all of this information about what made me successful. And I'm paring that down to a list of attributes. And I think it all comes down to this mindset that I treated everything as if I owned it.
Mhm.
I was the owner, like I was the owner of the company. And so a really great example I give for instance is, let's just say you're walking down the hall and you see a crumpled piece of paper. Well, there's 2 types of people. There's the type of people that walk past that piece of garbage on the floor because they'll just say that's not mine and they keep going. Or there's the person that's going to pick up that garbage because they say that shouldn't be here. Someone could trip on it. I don't want my company to look messy like that. I'm going to
Yeah.
pick it up even though that's not my garbage because that's the thing that needs to be done because it's in the best interest of the company. That's owner mindset. And everything I tackled and performed in the corporate workspace, I tackled with that mindset and was always forward thinking, answering the questions that I knew my bosses and owners and managers were going to ask before they got there, anticipating. And I want to teach people how to do that
But also what
to
you were able to
gain
do is some
success.
people might do that, but don't know how to kind of self-promote or get themselves noticed doing
Yeah.
that. So in
I
some
don't,
organizations, you could have somebody that like you could have a guy that's always coming up with new ideas as a programmer, right?
right,
He's always finding the problems, but
right.
he doesn't get promoted to be an architect. He doesn't get to be in the architect structure. He doesn't go up that line. They just keep him pigeonholed in his position. He doesn't get the opportunity, maybe because he doesn't know how to go on that forward motion. What made you kind of be able to
Yeah.
forward motion that?
Yeah, it's a good point. That is part of the book. So where I'll talk to people about, I mean, certainly an obvious one is you need to build champions within the company, someone that is going to help. I do believe that employees are observed and someone will always notice when you pick up that piece of garbage. It is then about positioning yourself to make sure that there is awareness further out. Champions are a big one, networking within the organization. But really, the other thing is diversifying. So I'm a generalist and I always volunteered for new work. So let's just go back to your software engineer person example. I would say, hey, I'm really enjoying this work and I think I'm solving problems. Is there any other special project that I could work on that I could try and solve those problems as well? Some corporations don't allow for that. And then I might just say, find a different corporation.
Yeah, that's where you can have that's where I think that's where the person maybe didn't realize that, their father maybe stayed there for 20 years or they got the
Yes.
grandfather stayed somewhere 20 years and they don't realize like when you hit that wall and you're not given the opportunity, kind of like when I left the corporate 500, Fortune 500 to go into a startup because I like the ability that if I come up
Right.
in a startup, say I want to do this, I volunteer to that, I get to do it. I get to own it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
you get compensation, you get bonuses, you get the work, you get the
Yeah.
responsibility, you get to work on the new project.
That's right.
You get to make it happen. So you're not just sitting there waiting for somebody to give you permission or give you the thing. You're kind of
Right.
able to self promote and actually self actualize and actually
That's
make it
right.
happen.
That's
Where some
right.
people are kind of looking for, well, my boss should pick me for that. Well, maybe
That's
you
right.
should volunteer for that.
That's right. Yeah, there's no amount of promotion or raise that I ever received before doing the work. I always did it from the perspective of solving a problem for someone and fixing it, becoming that known as that solution provider, that fixer. And then added, I mean, if nothing else, if I got no raise or promotion, I learned a new skill and I felt great
Yeah, you
because I
did it for
had
yourself.
learned something new, right? That was the benefit for me, and I get to take that with me and go
It's
with
an
it wherever
excellent
I
skill.
go. So, but I always do recommend that people keep a great file on their desktop as well. So when they do go those
Yeah,
over and
where you get
above,
that performance review,
that's
where you get to talk to and say, like, "Look what I've done. I've done A, B, C, D," and look
that's
at, like,
right.
with the cost benefit, and perhaps, like, it had that's how I got to Japan. I was
Oh,
working in a division, and I solved the problem. I went to
yeah,
the VP, and I said, "Hey, I solved this problem for this division, and I see
that's
on a
right.
poster in the hall that you're looking for people to go to Japan. I think that
Yeah,
what I did to solve this problem, I could probably it's relevant to what you wanna do in Japan." And he said, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then boom. It's like it wasn't like other people were waiting to be picked to go to
that's
Japan.
right. That's
I
right.
actually saw it and I asked to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Asking for volunteering to solve the problem is, yeah, so that is owner mindset. I hope to teach people what those things are so that they can have their own growth and fulfillment. And I believe that you can make yourself indispensable in a workplace by continuing to vary the work skills that you have across different departments and divisions, like
Mhm.
going to Japan, so that next time there's a layoff, they'll say, this person can do A, B, and C. This person can only do A. That may not be valid because the person's never had the opportunity for that,
Yeah.
but at least the awareness was brought forward, and I'd like to teach people how to do that. But I've always had a champion in my corner as well that helped me communicate the value of what I brought to the table, and that developing those relationships is critical.
That's interesting because it kinda you have the Swiss Army knife kind of perspective of, like, we're a jack of all trades, and then you got people who are saying, "Well, I wanna be a." I've had people on the show that kind of mindset, and it was like, "Well, you gotta perfect this." And so
Um,
you stay in something and you become very, niche oriented, and that can work,
yeah, it
but I've
can.
always been the type of mindset where that seemed like being in a box, and maybe
Yeah,
you got really good about being in a box, and you got to be an expert of that box. I always like to
totally.
go cross into other boxes,
Yes,
and
you nailed it.
and
There's a
and
book
and
called The
it
Range. The book called The Range talks about the value of being a generalist in whatever field you're in and not just staying in that box, and how successful artists, musicians, sculptors have a variety of skills and backgrounds, and that problem solving ability when you carry it from one profession to the other is what makes you so great in those other realms. So there's breadth, there may not be depth, as what you were just referring to, and some of your other folks that have recommended. If you're a surgeon, you absolutely have to have depth.
yeah, you gotta
But
have
if
the
you're in, yeah, corporate space, the breadth of having knowledge and how those other cogs work is imperative for success in the
especially
corporate
in
space.
this, AI age, is
Yeah,
your expertise, while relevant for the last 20 years, could be made obsolete by AI and
yeah,
automation and
yeah.
robotics. And so being a generalist or kind of like a jack of all trades or willing to push yourself into these other areas
That's right.
gives you more capability that if you're like, well, I'm a banker, but what if you learn some insurance? What if you
Yeah,
learn not only insurance, but you learn health insurance, you learn life insurance,
Right.
you learn mutual funds, you learn, so you go across the financial area and you're not just in one area,
That's
you're in
right.
multiple areas. So if there's a downturn in property casualty because they get tons of claims because of hurricanes or disasters, well, maybe
Right.
you can move to life or some or health. But if
That's
you
right.
were just in that one area, then there's a downturn, then everybody said, well, you don't have any property on your background. You don't
Yeah.
have any health insurance on your background. So we won't give
That's
you the
right.
job. It's like, well, the
Right.
data is the same way.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to kind of diversify. As I said, well, the databases aren't that different. So
Right.
I started to diversify and go into
That's right.
multiple areas. And if you can kind of sell that to yourself and
Right.
not feel scared,
That's
right?
right.
Then I think that's the thing. I think the people are always looking for safety, right? And
Yeah.
safety is that 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Safety may be that box, that cube. But
Yeah.
if you go to being a consultant, you don't have the salary, right? That is you might work for 6 months and then be off a month. Some
That's
people
true.
that's a disaster. And some people they can't put their head around.
That's true. That does happen. Hopefully, less and less as the company continues to grow. But I wouldn't trade it in a minute. Again,
You
the
think that
diversity.
that
The
doesn't scare you?
I mean, of course, it's scary. But what scares me more is being stuck in a place where I feel bored and not mentally challenged, and I don't get the thrill of helping small business owners. So I'm on the second half of my life. I hope I have 50 more years, but
Mhm.
I want to see and do more. And being in one place is not the way to
Yeah,
do it for
but this
me.
being able to, does that not being in one place mean that you like to go international? Or you just like are looking
Sure.
at anything?
Most of my work is done virtually, but absolutely I would. I don't speak any other languages. I've been trying to refresh my Spanish, but mostly I would need to be in a place where I'm English speaking. Well, I mean, there's some translators that are really great out there, in terms of virtual translators that I can do
Yeah,
that. But yeah, the concepts that we're talking about are agnostic and apply to
or
all businesses.
universal, kinda universal. Yeah, they would
Yeah.
that's what's interesting, like, you get out into the world and, if you go to, like, Taiwan, or you go to Hong Kong, or you go to Japan, there's so much opportunity in, like, the kinda information technology tech space.
Yeah.
I've dealt with entrepreneurs, they go off, to China to deal with, like, the infrastructure that can actually take an engineer's idea and then make a product.
Whew.
So I met an engineer that created a company and they didn't know anything about speaking Chinese or Taiwanese, but they realized like they had to go there
Yeah.
to get their product built, to get it. So they had to go get over the translation gap and say, well, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And went and did it because they kind of wanted to be, they didn't want to just give that to somebody else. And
Right.
eventually they could give it to somebody else, but they going and doing it themselves opened up their eyes
Absolutely.
to that, like, wow, I actually can get this done, and it is gonna meet my budget, and they can actually do the product. So it just opens up this whole world. It's like, wow, I don't have to be stuck here in Boston. I can go to Taiwan and I can get this done. It's just an
I
interesting
mean,
world that you can jump on a plane and do that. And he's like, wow, that actually can
yeah.
happen.
I mean, Boston's a cool city, but
Yeah, yeah. It's I live
traveling's a lot of
I live in
fun.
I live in the Northeast, so I mean, I like Boston, but, yeah, it's
I
just
mean, it's not as
interesting.
cool as Pittsburgh, but
Pittsburgh. Every place has its own, like, there's some things about every city that are just, really, you know, I think if you travel, if you go on the road, like Jack Kerouac on the road, you find the ambience in any place. You find the things that make you
absolutely.
love it, right? The restaurant in this no corner of the city, the people that they have these phrases. There's just something
Yeah.
about when you travel that you pick up things. In the virtual world, I get to travel by talking to people like you. So
Yeah.
I get to travel in the mind space or the talk space.
Yeah.
And this is a cool way through podcasting, I think is a universal way to get your idea across, in a long form in a world that's very short form. that you can
Yes.
actually get some of your ideas around. So are there ideas like the lessons learned that you think would be like 3 big lessons learned that you've learned over the years you want to relate to the audience?
Oh, I think that overcoming the limiting beliefs and fears when you want to do something new is the biggest thing that I've learned, and I think that comes with maturity and age. I don't know, maybe somebody knows that younger, but I did have, as you mentioned, conservative parents that wanted me to get a job and stay at one place for a long time and don't want you to move, and I was like, oh gosh, like I'm going to go out of my mind if I don't.
Ain't no work
I
for
gotta
me.
go. So I think we get held back and listen to those naysayers. So I think that is definitely number one. Um, I've learned that we cannot underestimate emotional intelligence in terms of working with people, and that skill is never ever going to be taken over by AI.
Yeah, I totally
Um,
believe that.
right. So we still are humans. We still interact with people, and I think that that can never be overlooked. And what would be the third thing? Gosh, I
Well, you
there
don't
I
have to have a third if you don't.
oh, it's so I've learned so much, and the more I am serving as an entrepreneur and a business consultant, I learn more every day. I learned of a new industry in this past year by a client that I didn't even know was an industry that existed. And
Mhm.
that kind of revelation in my 50s is super cool. I love learning new things and seeing things
Yeah.
for the first
You're
time
never
and just
done. You're not done
yeah,
until you're not here.
awesome.
That's the way I always look at it. As a
Yeah,
musician, like, you there's always somebody that's better than you.
yeah,
There's always somebody that comes out across the different than you, and you don't look at it as like a limitations, like, you look at it as, there's no bad note, there's an opportunity to grow. Like,
yeah,
as a musician, so we like a fusion jazz musician, we look at things of like, I can evolve the song
yeah,
over time. With every year I get better, or I heard something different that this guy approaches it this way. It's like, what if I take a little of this and take a little of that?
yeah.
And then that allows you to, grow over time and realize that there's always a learning that can
That's right.
happen. There's always something, and that human spark, what I love about music is you have all these tech pros saying, "Oh, we can have AI art." And yeah, you can have AI art that's kind of like a collage, and it looks very convincing because it's a collage you've never seen before. But it's
Right,
a collage that doesn't have heart, doesn't have
right.
soul. Art comes from somebody's personal experience. Computers aren't sentient yet, so they don't
Yeah,
have a personal experience that made them feel pain or melancholy or anger or happiness. They can just
right,
relate what they have, and they can
right.
create with AI very convincing collages,
Yeah,
right? Or reinterpretations, but they didn't come from that personal space that when you were talking about that human capability that
yeah,
has empathy and spark and emotion and
right.
all those emotional things. I think that's what is the weight of human experience. And tech bros might try to say, "Well, that's not necessary." Well, I think it's very necessary.
Yeah, yeah. I think you could. I think you can feel, especially in music, you can feel heart and soul.
Yeah, it's super important. And we're living in an age where we're going to see like the AI pop star. It's
Yeah.
already coming. I've seen it in the places I'm looking. I'm looking at AI hip hop stars and pop stars being generated already.
Wow.
There's
Wow.
there's a band on Spotify that's an AI generated band that has 500,000 followers, and it's all AI.
Wow.
So we're
It's
in this
crazy.
age, but I think it's people will find it like, junk food versus it's like you go get junk food, but when you want soul food, you get soul food. So like the music is the soul food for the heart, He's like I think like from a human artist, like a human, like if you have a human resources person or a fractional CEO that's not an AI bot generated machine, it's going to
Right.
give you that personal experience that you might really want, that you
Right.
really probably need. Maybe even you don't want, but you actually need it,
That's
right?
right.
And that's the thing. I don't think machines will ever replace that until we get. We're not at a Gene Roddenberry world yet. We don't have
I just
data.
No, I just read a interesting article this morning, and I'm sorry I can't remember the source, but basically the gist of the story was that some researchers evaluated CEOs who talked to their peers about predictions of the future of their industry and ran the same model through AI. And they were showing that the CEO, the CEO talking to peers is still coming up with better predictions of future success than the AI. And I hope to continue to see it, right? AI only knows what we've already told it.
Well, yeah,
So,
it takes what you give it. Like, it
right, it
only
can
knows
predict models, but it
it can
can't.
have an hallucination if you don't give it all the facts, right?
That's
So if
right.
you only trained it up to 2017, right, and then
Right.
you ask it about something in 2025, it will
Yeah.
give you an hallucination nation that actually, like, it doesn't have the facts.
Yeah.
It's missing a whole set of years, but it'll still
Yeah.
try to give you the answer. Now, that if you
Yeah.
don't cross-check it or verify,
Yeah.
it's burned lawyers, it's burned
Ooh.
doctors, it's burned people who've taken those answers that seem very convincing,
Mm.
but they weren't correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah. I hope I have another good point about AI. I mean, I do think that there's so many values as we're talking about disabilities and things like that, and you're talking about the artificial intelligence band. I mean, to think about people that maybe can't see and now could potentially wear glasses instead of a seeing eye dog might be able to describe everything that is
Yeah, there's a
around the
lot of cool
person.
tech. It just depends.
There's
It
yeah,
it's
it's
I think it's, like,
very
kinda
cool.
like the tech is kinda controlled by your own sense of self and your own sense of, like, society and moral conscience, right? So
Yeah,
if you like, yeah, like an Oppenheimer trap, like,
yeah,
you work on the bomb because you're a physicist and you wanna see if it can happen. But
yeah.
then you're like, "Oh, I now I see what actually happens, and maybe I shouldn't have done that."
That's right.
So,
That's
like,
right.
so you can take that, you could make a fusion reactor. You can make a fission
Yeah,
reactor, or you can make a bomb, right? So the
yeah,
problem with the tech is there are good things you can do with it, but there are bad things you can
absolutely.
do with it, and people that say it's, like, absolutely it's great. Well, you have to be concerned about humans are humans, and they can take any tool and turn it into something.
Yeah,
And you have to understand, like, the aspects that, like, yeah, you could actually use it for bad. You
yeah,
purpose. You could use it for purposes that aren't moral. You could use it for purposes that actually are antithetical to human success. But
yeah,
you can use it for successful things to help disabled people, to help people,
yes,
vulnerable people, to create new technologies. But there's a balance to everything. I'm a Buddhist. There's a scale, and
yeah,
you have to be aware of the whole thing.
that's right.
And not just look
Balance
like,
in everything is key.
yeah, people just look at, "Oh, it's this." Yeah, it's this, but it can be that.
Yeah.
But thank you for being on the show. It's always really interesting to talk to you. I want people to go to stephaniewarlick.com. If they go there, they can get to all your content from there.
Yeah. Yes. My books, my consulting. Thank you. It's great
And
talking to you, Finn.
and that's clickable. A lot of people know in the description of the podcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and any other channel we're on, that URL will be a hyperlink that you can click through. We do encourage people who watch the show to click through on that when they go check it on LinkedIn or YouTube, or Spotify or Apple. You'll be able to click through on that and do support the guests that are on the show by clicking through and checking their content. And if they have books, check out the books, buy the books, read the books, check out the courses. If you offer courses or anything you do, check out the offerings you have. I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Love talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.